Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
You know, Ricardo Montalban had a lot of trouble getting a job after Fantasy Island.
Why is that?
Because no one wants to hire an ex-con.
Ricardo Montalban. Fernando Lamas y Ricardo Montalban. Montalban.
Montalban es muy macho.
We're idiots. So, welcome to episode 43 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Egg 43. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. And this week we're on 43. We're almost to a year now.
Almost a year.
Almost to the 1 year anniversary. That'll be a special episode.
Yes.
But we're back this week and ready for some more hijinks with some more nerdery and some low jinks with some more murdery.
Low jinks. I love it.
So, well, mine are rarely upbeat. So with that, I will turn the show over to you, Zig. Man, my throat. Excuse me. Yeah.
All right. Good deal.
Wow.
I would like to, before we start, I would like to give a little shout out to Captain Stinny. We love you. We miss you. And we promise not to go into Piedmont.
You know what? I say with that, let's take a moment of silence for Uncle Stinny. All right, Zig. So take it away.
Episode 43 is is about Star Trek TAS, sir. That would be the animated series of Star Trek.
So yet another episode where we're covering an individual entity of Star Trek.
Yes, an individual entity of Star Trek. As I said, we would do them chronologically, and after the original series chronologically, the next series is the animated series,
which is the animated version of the original series.
Oh yeah. They even got some of the old writers, and they would do an episode of Star Trek, but they would animate it, and instead of it being an hour, it's only 30 minutes.
Right.
It was, supposedly aimed at children, but honestly, they were just doing what they did before in a more compact version. So I remember loving it as a child, a small child, as a matter of fact. I didn't catch it on the first broadcast because when they first aired it, I was just a few months old. But they rebroadcast it in 76 and 77. And I was like 3 and 4, and I caught it on Saturday mornings and thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Was it Hanna-Barbera?
No, it was Filmation.
Filmation, thank you.
It was Filmation, and at some point I'm going to do an episode on Filmation themselves, just because I don't think they get the due that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do just basically a retrospective on Filmation altogether.
Great.
So Star Trek, the animated series, originally airing as Star Trek in the Animated Adventures of Gene Roddenberry. Star Trek is an American animated science fiction television series created by Gene Roddenberry. It originally aired Saturday mornings from September 8th, 1973 to October 12th, 1974 on NBC. It ran 22 episodes over 2 seasons. The second series in the Star Trek franchise, it featured the same characters as Star Trek, the original series set in the 23rd century when Earth is part of the United Federation of Planets. It follows the adventures of the Starfleet vessel USS Enterprise as it explores the Milky Way galaxy. Now, after the cancellation of the original series in 1969, the live-action show proved popular in syndication and generated significant fan enthusiasm. Again, as we said before, this is kind of where this show lived and grew. It wasn't so much when it was a network show, but when it was a syndication, it really killed. Now, granted, they canceled it with the numbers that they canceled it at in 1969. That show would have got 10 seasons here in today's numbers, because we only had 3 networks and now we have so many more. The significant fan enthusiasm resulted in Roddenberry's decision to continue the series in an animated form because it was cheaper to do. Much of the original cast returned to provide voiceovers for the characters, and show writers David Gerrold and DC Fontana characterized the animated series as effectively a 4th season of the original series, which would make it the 2nd season of TAS, the 5th season of TOS. After the conclusion of the animated series, the adventures of the characters continued in live-action theatrical films, the first being the 1979 film Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So, did you watch the animated series when you were a kid?
Not when I was a kid. I caught it later.
Mm-hmm.
I think I caught it on either the Cartoon Network or Nick at Night.
Okay.
One of those two, but it was definitely later when I caught it. And it was later, and I didn't consider the stories as good as the hour-long live action.
I would agree with that. I feel like they were a little rushed.
A little rushed and a little hokey, too.
Yeah. Some of the animation style that Filmation was pretty popular for, or has since become popular for, what they call the Filmation style, where they use the same backgrounds over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
They do nice, long, establishing pan shots of the background where they basically didn't have to animate anything. They just kind of, rolled the scene. I think they have their place. I think they are beautiful, but there were some other things like because they didn't want to save some money on animation, they would have the characters put their hands in front of their mouths when they're speaking, so they didn't have to animate the lips as much. They do that a lot in the animated series. I went back and watched it recently when I was making the notes for this, and did not realize how much they did that until just recently. When I was kind of looking at it with a critical eye. The animated series was originally cast the last episodic portrayals of the characters until the cartoon-like graphics of the Star Trek 20th anniversary computer game in 1992, as well as its sequel, Star Trek Judgment Rights in 93. Both appeared after the cast's final film together, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, released in December 1991.
I loved the 20th anniversary Star Trek video game.
Did you really?
Yes. I went all the way through. Both Keith and I went all the way through it. I absolutely loved it. It had so much tongue-in-cheek stuff. Talked about red shirts. Talked about it had Harry Mudd in it. At one point, they made a joke about that, were they talking about Harry Mudd or not? It was really cool. You had both starship combat and you had ground missions that you had to solve. And it was one of those, you had to find a piece in one room that would take you to another place to solve the puzzle in another room. And I think there was maybe a couple of things that you even had to carry over from other adventures to solve the puzzles in the rooms. I loved it. I loved it.
That sounds really cool. I don't think I ever played it.
Yeah, it was a blast.
Well, the animated series was critically acclaimed and was the first Star Trek series to win an Emmy Award. I did not know that.
I didn't either.
Yeah, its second season won the 1975 Emmy for Outstanding Entertainment in a Children's Series. Now, Lou Scheimer, who ran Filmation, who was also the voice of Orko in He-Man, if you don't know that little nugget of truth.
And that's what I was going to ask. Filmation is He-Man and She-Ra and G.I. Joe?
No. I think it was G.I. Joe Filmation. I'm going to have to look that up. They did some live action stuff back in the 70s. They also did the Flash Gordon series, which was phenomenal. But again, you got that same sort of low establishing shots.
Right. But it was He-Man and She-Ra. That was Filmation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. He-Man and She-Ra was basically the last thing that Filmation really kind of did. Lou Scheimer was in talks with Star Trek producer Paramount Television and creator Gene Roddenberry to create an animated spinoff series while the original series was still in production during its third season. Paramount's director of special programming, Philip Mayer, and Filmation writer-animator Don R. Christensen worked together to create a proposal for the series that would target a younger audience and have an educational spin. Now, having said that, they have gone back to do this again. There's a new series called Prodigy, which is on right now, where it's exactly that. It's a children's show that's animated, but it's also Star Trek. And it's really, really, well, it's good for kids. It is a little hokey to the adult eyes, but Prodigy really is pretty cool. And the last episode I saw, they were this kid kept going through the Kobayashi Maru, and he got to pick his crew, and he picked Spock, and the chief of security was Odo, and basically they used snippets of audio from the different series to bring those characters to life, and it was really kind of touching.
What about Lower Decks?
Lower Decks is an adult cartoon.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like Rick and Morty, but it's more for grown-ups who know Star Trek. Because I think Lower Decks would be funny if you didn't know Star Trek,
right?
But it's not nearly as funny because there's a bunch of inside jokes.
And you talk about Rick and Morty. I did not realize how adult Rick and Morty was until 2 weeks ago when I caught an episode, and I was like, oh my God.
Which episode did you catch?
The one where the professor intentionally turned himself into a pickle versus go to therapy.
I'm Pickle Rick.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny though.
It was very funny. I didn't realize that it wasn't a kid's cartoon.
It is not.
Yeah.
It is so not a kid's cartoon. It is Dan Harmon, the same guy that did Community. So a lot of that comedy kind of bleeds over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody who has been in Community has been in an episode of Rick and Morty.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. They like working with the dude. He's funny. I'm sorry, circling back as we do. The main cast of Star Trek, the original series, would train the teenage crew of a ship called Excalibur about space exploration. And the new teenage crew included a Vulcan named Steve, an African-American boy named Bob, and a Chinese boy named Stick. However, due to the bitter relationship between Roddenberry and Paramount at the time, Scheimer was not able to get the two parties talking to each other in order to agree on a deal for several years. During this time, the project in its original form was phased out. So yeah, a Vulcan named Steve. I included that in there simply for that. We need a Vulcan
and a guy named Stick.
Yeah, and a Chinese dude named Stick. Oh my God, Vulcan named Steve. Steve. Sorry, circling back as we do. A deal was finally reached in early 1973 and publicly announced in early March of 1973 because of NBC's strong interest in the series. Roddenberry and Filmation were allotted very generous terms, a guaranteed minimum of 2 seasons with a combined 22 episodes, a budget of $75,000 per episode, and full creative control in Gene Roddenberry's hands. Roddenberry and Filmation agreed that the series should be for all ages rather than the children-oriented approach of the original proposal. And at Roddenberry's suggestion, the original scripts editor, D.C. Fontana, was hired as the series story editor and associate producer. Despite the meager payment for writers, $1,300 per script with no residuals, the opportunity to write a Star Trek episode without the special effects limitations of live action proved very appealing. And many of the original series writers joined the staff. Fontana steering the series away from the romantic and sexual elements of the original series, and she felt children would not be interested in them and wanted the animated series to appeal to children as well as adults. The animated series featured most of the original cast voicing their characters. The major exceptions were the characters of Pavel Chekhov, Walter Koenig, who did not appear in the series because the series budget could not afford the complete cast. He was replaced by Lieutenant Erex, whose Adosian species had 3 arms and 3 legs, and Lieutenant Imres, a female K-10, sometimes stood in for Uhura as communications officer. Besides performing their characters, Montgomery Scott and Christine Chappell, James Doohan and Majel Barrett also performed the voices of Erex and Imres, respectively.
I thought I remembered Uhura in the series.
She was. Initially, Filmation was only going to use the voice of Shatner, Nimoy, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, Doohan, and Barrett. Doohan and Barrett would also perform the voices of Sulu and Uhura. Nimoy refused to voice Spock in the series unless Nichelle Nichols and George Takei were added to the cast, claiming that Sulu and Uhura were proof of the ethnic diversity of the 23rd century and should not be recast. Nimoy also took the stand as a matter of principle, as he knew of the financial troubles many of the Star Trek co-stars were facing after cancellation of the series. Now, according to Scheimer, when Nimoy pointed out that the casting would cut the only 2 minority actors of the series, Scheimer said he was horrified that he unintendedly slighted or made all the worse because we were the one studio who had been championing diversity in its output. Koenig was not forgotten, as Filmation was able to assuage Nimoy's complaint on his account by buying a script from Koenig for one episode, The Infinite Vulcan. So Koenig actually wrote a script, and he came on and voiced some other stuff too, like as a guest star.
Gotcha.
So they got them all. They couldn't get them all as the main cast.
Right.
Voice recording began in in June 1973, with the first 3 episodes recording as an ensemble. Basically all the voice actors for the episode in the room at the same time. Now, later episodes use the more typical model of recording the voice actors separately to work around the other commitments. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, who were both touring in plays at the time, recorded their lines in whatever city they happened to be performing in and had the tapes shipped to the studio. Doohan and Barrett, besides providing the voices of the original series characters and newcomers, Erex and Imres, performed virtually all of the guest star characters in the series, with the exception such as Cyrano Jones and Harry Mudd, who were performed by the original actors from the original series. Other guest voices included the aforementioned Walter Koenig, Ed Bishop, who voiced the Megan prosecutor in The Magics of Megas 2, and Ted Knight, who voiced Carter Winston in The Survivor. Nichelle Nichols performed character voices in addition to Uhura in several episodes, including The Time Trap and The Lorelei Singers. Now, Don Christensen, who created the original proposal, remained involved as an art director, and other animation staff included Reuben Timmons, who oversaw all shots involving the Enterprise, and a young Bob Klein. The animators rotoscoped the animation for the Enterprise and the original cast from 35 millimeter film footage of the original series. So they did use a lot of rotoscoping because there was a lot of stuff out there already. The chevrons were enlarged to make them easier to animate, but otherwise the crew's uniforms were unaltered from the original series. So if you ever watch the animated series, you'll notice that that their Starfleet patches are bigger because it just made them easier to see. Due to hiring nearly the entire regular cast of the original show, little money was left in the budget for the animation. So Filmation cut costs by using stock footage and shortcuts, such as having a character put their hand over their mouth while speaking, which I alluded to before.
Right.
And silhouetting characters in action. The animated series dispensed with the original series theme music composed by Alexander Courage in favor of a new theme credited to Yvette Blaze and Jeff Michael, but actually written by Filmation composer Ray Ellis. Ellis used the pseudonym Yvette Blaze, the maiden name of his wife, due to complications with royalties and publishing companies, while Jeff Michael is a pseudonym for producer Norm Prescott, who received a pseudonym credit and a cut from the royalties on all Filmation music as part of the standard deal at the time. Writing on Facebook Starlog magazine official page in March 2021, Gerald revealed that the reason for the long-standing feud between Courage and Roddenberry over residual payments for airings of Star Trek TOS episodes using the original theme. When Courage turned in the original music, Roddenberry added his own lyrics to it, thereby depriving Courage of half his residuals. Courage never forgave Roddenberry and refused to give him permission for the reuse of the theme. That's when new music was written for the animated series and again for the movies. This theme that they used, or these themes that they used in the animated series went on to be used in the movies. And eventually the Next Generation. So all of the orchestrated themes actually come from these two producers at Filmations. It has been expanded upon, but the Star Trek sound that everybody likes, that corn gold sound.
The theremin?
No. This is after the theremin.
Oh, okay.
The theremin stuff. Roddenberry didn't want to pay this guy, so that's why they don't use it anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why they went to the orchestrated themes. It was because of this. Now, I did pull out some individual episodes that I'd like to discuss. Yes, there's three that again, it is a little hokey. It's a little more aimed at children, but there are three episodes that all Star Trek fans probably ought to see. The first being the Counterclock Incident. It's the series finale of the American animated science fiction series, or science fiction television series Star Trek, and the 22nd episode overall. This episode was the sixth and final episode of the second season, and it first aired in the NBC Saturday morning lineup on October 12, 1974, and was written by Fred Bronson under the pen name John Culver. Bronson used a pen name because he was NBC's publicist at the time and was concerned that it would look improper to get a screen credit. Bronson would eventually work on two Next Generation episodes, Menage a Troy and The Game. The episode established the Enterprise first captain as Robert April. It was set in the 21st century, and the series follows the adventures of Captain James T. Kirk and the crew of the Starfleet ship Enterprise. And in this episode, the Enterprise is unwillingly pulled by a smaller craft into the heart of a supernova and finds itself in another universe. The Federation Starship Enterprise is transporting a very distinguished guest. Its first commander, Commodore Robert April, voiced by James Doohan, and his wife, Sarah, voiced by Nichelle Nichols, the first medical officer on the starship equipped with a warp drive. They designed many of the tools in Dr. McCoy's sick bay, and their destination is a diplomatic conference on the planet Babel and his planned retirement ceremony when it encounters a ship flying at fantastic speeds directly into a supernova. The Enterprise attempts to assist by grabbing the vessel with a tractor beam and locks into it, but instead both ships are pulled through the supernova and into a negative universe where time flows backwards and everything works in a counterclockwise fashion. Consequently, everyone aboard the ship begins to grow younger. The young woman piloting the ship, Carla 5, also voiced by Nichols, takes them to her homeworld, Aret, which is Terra backwards, and seeks to help her son, a much older man named Carl 4, also voiced by James Doohan. In a race against time for the increasingly de-aging Enterprise crew, they work out a solution for getting back home. Captain Kirk and his crew members reduced to children. April, now a 30-year-old man, retakes command and must bring the Enterprise to safety before it's too late. The attempt to get back home is successful, and he and his wife Sarah use the transporter to restore themselves and the rest of the crew to their proper ages. The reason that one's important is because of Robert April.
Mm-hmm.
It actually established him as the original captain of the Enterprise before Pike.
And didn't they have an episode of Next Gen where they were all de-aging as well?
Yes. They actually brought that back. I want to say it might have been The Trap. Because one of the writers ended up writing for Next Gen.
Okay.
So yeah, it's important to see that one because it's kind of helps set the stage for some Star Trek lore, and it sets up some stuff for Next Gen. Now, the next one is called the Slaver Weapon. This was written by Larry Niven, and it is what ties Star Trek to the known space universe of Larry Niven.
You talking about Ringworld?
Yes.
Yes.
It is the 14th episode of the first season of the American animated science fiction television series Star Trek: The Animated Series. And it first aired on NBC on December 8th, 1973, and was written by the aforementioned Niven. It's based on an original short story, The Soft Weapon. The episode is expanded to become the first half of a full-length novel by science fiction author Alan D. Foster for Star Trek Log 10. The crew of the Starship Enterprise in this episode, while traveling by shuttlecraft, several Enterprise crew members are captured and have to use their individual strengths to prevent a powerful alien weapon from falling into the wrong hands. Communications Officer Lieutenant Uhura and Helmsman Lieutenant Hikaru Sulu are en route to Starbase 25 to deliver a stasis box, a rare artifact of the slaver culture. The now extinct slavers use these objects to carry weapons, valuable scientific instruments, and data. The boxes can detect each other, and evidence show that another device is located near Beta Lyrae. Following the signal, the shuttle lands on an ice planet where the crew is captured by the hostile cat-like Kzinti. The Kzinti had an empty stasis box of their own and were using it to lure in passing starships. They're trying to steal the boxes in hopes of finding a super weapon that will return their empire to its former greatness. The Kzinti open the box that the Enterprise has been transporting, finding inside some fresh meat, a picture of a slaver, and a powerful but unfamiliar alien device, which the Kzinti immediately suspect is a weapon. The weapon passes hands several times between the Federation and the Kzinti crew, during which time Sulu discovers a total conversion beam setting. The Kzinti recapture all three Federation personnel and weapon. As the Kzinti explore the device in many settings, they discover a war computer that starts talking to them. After the Kzinti fail to provide several code words and ask about the total conversion beam setting, the weapon concludes that they are enemies and directs them to what it claims is the setting that they want, but which is actually a self-destruct setting. When the Kzinti activate the setting, it turns out to be a disruptor field and destroys the weapon and kills the Kzinti. Now, how this came about is DC Fontana approached Larry Niven in 1973 to see if he would write an episode for the series. She suggested it might adapt to one of his existing stories. And at the time, Niven was a major up-and-coming force in science fiction. In 1971, the novel Ringworld was awarded the Hugo Award for Best Novel and the Nebula Award for Best Novel and Locus Award for Best Novel. Niven's first attempt to write a teleplay introducing his known space settings into the Star Trek universe. The story involved a group of outsiders who were using a quantum black hole to disable passing starships in order to pirate them. Fontana advised him that the original version wouldn't work as an episode, but his second attempt proved to be too bloody. When Niven visited Gene Roddenberry's house one afternoon, Roddenberry suggested that he use his short story, The Soft Weapon, as the basis for the episode. The story opens with a small spacecraft making a quick side trip to view Beta Lyrae. On board are the human couple who crew the spacecraft, and their passenger, a Pearson's puppeteer named Nessus. Nessus has a stasis box in his possession. and a routine scan reveals there's another stasis box is somewhere on Beta Lyrae. They are captured by a group of Kzinti pirates, much as in the story, and the three eventually outwit the Kzinti and escape. Now, for the adaptation in the Star Trek universe, Niven changed the identity of the characters to Sulu and Uhura, but most of the rest of the story remains unchanged. There were minor changes, simply tell the storyline. One of the things involving the soft weapon is the artifacts were built by the Tenuktapun in the original known space. They were an enslaved species by the slavers, and they eventually destroyed everything in the universe or in the galaxy just to kill the slavers because it sucked being their captives. So I find it very interesting that we were able to bring both Kzinti and the idea of the slavers or the Tavs, the world of the Tavs, into Star Trek by this, and it is officially canon. The third one I want to talk about is called Yesteryear. Yesteryear is the second episode of the first season of TAS. Oh, I'm sorry, and I'll keep saying TAS. It stands for the animated series, but it's shorthand. And if you say TAS to another to a Star Trek fan, they're going to think you're really smart.
I'm with you.
It first aired on NBC Saturday morning lineup on September 15th, 1973, and was written by veteran Star Trek writer DC Fontana herself, and is widely regarded as one of the best episodes of the series. It was nominated for a Daytime Emmy Award. Yesteryear guest starred Mark Leonard as the role of Sarek, Spock's father. In the episode, Enterprise First Officer Spock must travel in time to his childhood to keep his younger self from dying and being replaced by an Andorian on the ship. So how it starts out, Captain Kirk and Spock return from a time-traveling research project they're conducting using the Guardian of Forever and other Starfleet historians. When they emerge from the portal, no one on board the Federation starship Enterprise recognizes Spock. The ship's first officer is an Andorian, Commander Thalen. In the new timeline, history has recorded that Spock died at age 7 undergoing the Cos-1 ordeal on Vulcan. However, Spock remembers that when he took the Cos-1, his life was saved by Selleck, an adult relative, when a desert creature with poisonous claws called Lamatia attacked them. Kirk hypothesized that Selleck was actually a time-traveling Spock. While Kirk and Spock were in the portal, the Guardian and historians had run a scan of recent Vulcan history. The pair realized that they were observing the birth of Orion at the same time. Spock could have been in two places at once to save himself as a child. Spock must go back through the time gate and save the life of the child he was. Thalen is supportive of Spock's effort despite the consequences of his own existence. Spock assumes the identity of Selleck, a distant cousin of Sarek, and is welcomed into the home of Sarek and Amanda Grayson. Selleck journeys into the desert to find his younger self and saves the boy. However, Ichaya, Spock's pet Salot, is gravely wounded. The younger Spock runs to fetch a healer. The healer tends to Ichaya and informs Selleck and Spock that it is too late for an antidote. He can only prolong Ichaya's life, during which he will be in pain from the poison or euthanize him. Young Spock chooses the latter. By making this choice, Spock has thus chosen the Vulcan way of life, logic and emotional control. And his elder self, successful in repairing history, returns to the restored present day, but not before teaching his younger self how to perform the Vulcan nerve pinch in order to deal with some school bullies. The network and NBC expressed concern about the episode's depiction of a pet being euthanized. However, Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry approved the writer DC Fontana's handling of the issue. And since NBC had given Roddenberry full creative control of the series, they had little choice but to broadcast the episode as it was. The animated series co-producer Lou Scheimer later said, "Yesteryear was probably my favorite episode. It sent a message to kids to be positive in the face of death." And that basically does it for the animated series.
That's cool. I need to go back and watch, especially the 3 episodes you mentioned, because I think they sound really cool.
Yeah, the Kzinti look great too. I mean, granted that Filmation, they didn't animate well, but they did draw very well. So the Kzinti look great.
I love the Kzinti. They are close relatives to the Kzinti are brought about in Starfleet battles as allies to the Federation, and their direct opposition are the Lyrans, who are also a cat-like race who border the Kzinti Empire. And so they are enemies with both the Federation and the Kzinti. So I'd like to see the episode just to see how they portray the Kzinti.
It's on Paramount Plus, man.
Cool. Then I can pick it up from there.
So yes, you want to hit up Yesteryear, the Slaver Weapon, and the Counterclock Incident.
Awesome. I will do so. I will actually take a glance at those. So cool. Thanks for bringing us that.
Sure. Anytime. It was my pleasure, sir.
Well, with that, then I guess if we want to, we have a murder to cover this week.
Murder.
Shock of shocks. So with this,
it is nerdery and
murdery, right? I got my information off Wikipedia, Sky News, That Chapter, and the U.S. Sun, and this is the murder of Grace Milane.
Grace Milane.
Yes. 22-year-old Grace Milane was from Wickford, Essex in England. She'd recently graduated from the University of Lincoln in 2018 with a bachelor's in advertising and marketing. And she decided she wanted to take a gap year. And so she went on a backpacking tour. She originally spent 6 weeks in South America, and then she entered New Zealand for a 2-week stay on November 20th, 2018, and traveled around the Upper North Island. She was hoping later to travel to Thailand, the Philippines, and Australia. So on November 30th, she arrived in Auckland, which is the largest city in New Zealand. And she decided to go on a Tinder date here, or go on to Tinder. And she found 26-year-old Jesse Kempson, who she decided to go on a date with on December 1st. She was staying in a hostel called the Base Backpackers, and she went out into the city street to go meet Jesse. Well, Jesse started out at the Bluestone Room, which was next to the City Life Hotel on Queen Street, where he was living. And he got there about a half hour before meeting Grace. And in that half hour, he pretty much just downed 4 bottles of beer. So, I don't know whether to calm his nerves or what, but pretty much pounded 4 bottles down.
It's what they do in New Zealand, man.
Grace, meanwhile, she was early at their meeting place with the Sky Tower. And this is a very highly public place where she felt she could meet someone safely. CCTV is very, very big in Auckland. You really can't go anywhere without being on camera somewhere. So Kempson arrived and they recognized each other immediately, as evidence from their hug and their smiles as they met. Again, this was caught on camera, and they got together at 5:45 p.m. Their first stop was a burger restaurant, which was on the first floor of the Sky City complex. This is an entertainment complex and casino in the central business district, and it's across the street from the Sky Tower. They ordered cocktails and they went to a table to talk some more. Again, this was caught on camera. About an hour and a half later, Kempson paid their tab and they left the bar to go to a restaurant about less than a block away. It was called the Mexican Cafe. And here they drank 2 pitchers of margarita and 1 pitcher of sangria in a little over an hour. So they both got their drink on.
Yes, they did.
Again, Kempson paid for the drinks. They left the cafe and they went back to the Bluestone Room where Kempson had started the evening. And everything seemed to be going really good. They were having a really good time. Kempson was seen chatting up the doorman and even putting his arm around the server, and they're laughing. And Grace is talking rapidly. She's smiling constantly. So, everything looks really good. At 8:40 p.m., Kempson put his hand behind Grace's head and pulls it towards him, and they kissed for a little while. They kissed several more times over the next hour. And then Kempson went off to the restroom, and Grace messaged a friend during the date, said, "I clicked with him so well." And Kempson, as he was walking out of view, could see that he was checking his phone. And later it would be discovered that he was posting a message on Grace's Facebook page. So at about 9 p.m. On Victoria Street, still in the Central District, she's seen on the CCTV at Sky City. She's last seen at 9:41 p.m. at the City Life Hotel with Kempson. Remember, that's where he lived.
Yes.
They're seen entering an elevator where Kempson fumbled for his key card, and then they headed for his room 308. Grace,
he was fumbling for his key card after all of that drinking. Go figure.
Right. Well, unfortunately, Grace would not leave this room alive.
Oh.
December 2nd was Grace's birthday, and she was getting birthday wishes sent to her family and friends on social media, but this was all going unanswered. Kempson, meanwhile, at 1:30 a.m. was carrying out a number of internet searches, including looking up hottest fire, Waitakere Ranges, which are a mountain range in Auckland. He also visited Pornhub and took several intimate pictures of Grace's dead body, including close-ups and manipulating her body to get the shots he wanted. Later that morning, with Grace still dead in his room, Kempson texted another woman he met on Tinder trying to get a date for later that day. This is a good guy.
Wow.
Yeah. Shortly after this, he was caught on CCTV buying a suitcase, which matched one that he already owned. He then went to a supermarket to buy cleaning supplies and then went to rent a car. He rented a red Toyota hatchback. And then he went on his date with the other woman he had been texting earlier. Grace's body is still in his room.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, she's still there. The woman later said that the date was very intense, but quite calm. Kempson did tell her that all of his friends were police officers and that his closest friend was coming to New Zealand to be a Crown prosecutor. She then told him about a murder trial she had once gone to, and he told her it's crazy how guys can make one wrong move and go to jail for the rest of their lives. And then he also told her that his police buddies were searching for a body in the Waitakere Mountains.
Huh.
Jesse asked her if he knew that scent dogs could not detect a body if it was buried more than 4 feet deep. He then went on to say he had heard about a guy who asked his girlfriend to have rough sex, but it had gone wrong and she died in the process. The woman said she felt very uncomfortable and changed the topic to traveling.
I'll bet she did.
She said she felt kind of anxious on the date, and she soon left while avoiding going directly to her car. Kempson texted her later asking for another date, but she then turned him down. Kempson went back to his room about 5:45, and he called to rent a Rug Doctor steam cleaner. He told the store he needed it to remove a red wine stain that was on his carpet. He went and got his car, which he parked outside the hotel before going inside and getting a luggage trolley. And then he went up to his room with the trolley and returned with 2 suitcases on the trolley, one of which was the same one he had seen purchasing earlier. He loaded the cases into the car, moved it to a nearby car park. And then early the next day, about 6:15, he's seen leaving the hotel and driving off in his car, stopping only to buy, guess what he's buying here? A shovel and at a store out of town. He returned to his hotel about 9:30 a.m., went to the dry cleaners, dumped off trash, and then went to clean the Toyota at a car wash. He is seen dumping more items on the 5th of December, cleaning out the car. I mean, he's getting rid of a body. Let's go ahead and put a fine point on it.
And he thinks he's gotten away with it.
Yes, but he's on camera doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this whole thing was caught on camera. Grace's parents got very nervous after 3 days of no reply, so they called the local police, and they first went to the hotel where Grace was staying, and the hotel reported that she never returned to her room. Police initially said there was no evidence of foul play. Yeah, at her room. I can understand that. Nothing happened at her room. But detectives were investigating, and because of the Facebook posts, Kempson left Grace just 11 minutes before they left the Bluestone room. He became a person of interest.
Well, yeah, because, oh, hey, you're the last person to see her alive.
Exactly. And Kempson admitted to seeing Grace, but he said they parted ways at 10 p.m. on the evening she went missing. So police did what they need to do, and they gathered all the CCTV footage proving that Kempson was lying.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought him into a second interview. And then during the second interview, he said, yeah, I kind of lied the first time. He stated now that she had died during rough sex, in which she asked him to try bondage and choke her to make sex more pleasurable, and that she died during. He said afterward he took a shower and fell asleep under the water. When he woke up, he found Grace lying on the floor dead. During this interview, police went to Jesse's hotel room and tested it with luminol. And they, of course, found blood on the carpet where he had tried to clean it.
Mm-hmm.
Police announced on December 8th that they were treating the case as a homicide, and Kempson was subsequently charged with murder, and he was taken into custody on December 8th at 3 p.m. Fast work here.
Yeah, it's New Zealand. They don't mess around, dude.
No. He did appear in Auckland District Court on December 10th, 2018, and charged with murdering Grace. During his trial, he was described as a sociopath, which made some of the women he met or communicated with on Highly Tender very uncomfortable. It later came out that Kempson took another British tourist out on a Tinder date before bringing her back to his Auckland motel room 8 months before he killed Grace. He raped her while she lay on the bed crying and frozen with fear after she refused to have sex with him. But she kept the attack secret until seeing the news coverage of Kempson being charged with Grace's murder, at which point she came forward.
Wow.
8 months.
8 months.
Kempson would actually end up having 3 trials. The trials began on November 4th, 2019 with the jury selection. Kempson pled, say it with me, not guilty.
Yeah, well, of course not.
The prosecution.
I didn't do that. We have you on tape.
Wasn't me. The prosecution was led by Crown Solicitor Brian Dickey, and he argued that Kempson had strangled Grace to death following a Tinder date. The Crown also testified that after killing her, Kempson conducted several internet searches on how to dispose of bodies, as well as viewing pornography. Dickey also said that Kempson calmly and callously disposed of Grace's body and other evidence, and then created a labyrinth of storytelling and lies to cover his tracks. There were 3 female witnesses who Kempson had also met through Tinder. They all testified that he liked being help me pronounce this, masochistic?
Masochistic.
Thank you. And bondage sex, which included choking. One witness he communicated with said she was actually wary of meeting him, but shared a series of messages in which he detailed his sexual preferences, and he admitted to her why he enjoyed doing what he did. The witness, whose identity is protected, said he did it because it made him feel more superior and in control. The Crown also presented security camera footage of Kempson and Grace, including his renting carpet cleaning machine at the Countdown Supermarket in Quay Street. A Crown expert witness, pathologist Simon Stables, testified that a post-mortem examination of Grace's body had found bruising consistent with someone who had been restrained and asphyxiated. Grace's post-mortem blood alcohol concentration was measured at 106 milligrams of alcohol per 100 milliliters of blood, which is over the legal driving limit of 50 per 100 milliliters. So twice the legal limit.
Mm-hmm.
The defense team, led by Ian Brookie, argued that Grace's death was the result of a consensual sexual misadventure between Kempson and Grace.
Could you say that again?
Sure. Grace's death was the result of a consensual sexual misadventure between Kempson and Grace.
All right, that is the nicest way I've ever heard that said.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. Please continue.
Sure. They alleged that Grace had an interest in bondage and sadomasochism, and had also asked Kempson to choke her during a consensual sex game, which went wrong. While acknowledging that Kempson had tried to hide and bury the victim's body, they contended that he had panicked. The defense's expert witness, pathologist Fenton Garavan, contested the Crown's autopsy evidence, claiming her injuries were consistent with a consensual act due to the lack of defensive wounds on Grace's body. Garavan also alleged that the victim's alcohol consumption could have contributed to her death. I don't disagree with that. They drank a lot that night.
Yes, they did.
The initial trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury consisted of 7 women and 5 men. They returned a verdict of guilty on November 22nd, 2019, after deliberating for 5 hours. And in New Zealand, murder carries a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole of 10 years, except where such a sentence would be manifestly unjust, like mercy killings.
Yeah.
Judges do have the discretion to order a longer non-parole period. In another trial, he was convicted of terrorizing his live-in girlfriend over a period of months. He subjected her to violent assaults, threatened her with a butcher's knife, and then forced her into humiliating sex acts after telling her he had been sent by the CIA to kill her.
The CIA sent a New Zealander to kill some other random New Zealander? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
I'm with you.
You have captured his story.
Okay. Please carry on. Sorry.
Kempson was unwilling to accept what he had done. He showed no remorse, and he shouted at the judge in one of the 3 trials, "You have no reason to convict me. You're full of shit, mate."
Wow.
Wish I could say that better with a better accent.
The New Zealand flat accent. It's a lot like the Australian one.
Yeah.
You can't say words like, "I can't balance."
During his initial appearance, Kempson was denied name suppression. And so this is where the media cannot publicize the name of the person in the trial. Mm-hmm. And so he was initially denied that, but his defense did appeal that, automatically triggering interim name suppression for a period of 20 working days. So basically had to give him a John Doe or something like that. However, that suppression order could not be enforced against media outlets outside of New Zealand, and several outlets, particularly in the United Kingdom, chose to publish Kempson's name. Google included Kempson's name in an email it sent to subscribers of its newsletter on trending topics in New Zealand, which claimed that 100,000 searches had been done on the name within the country. Justice Minister Andrew Little and the New Zealand Bar Association criticized the foreign media, saying the publication of Kempson's name endangered his right to a fair trial. I don't know about that. They were New Zealanders. Everything was under suppression there. It's just this was a UK citizen that was killed, and so they published everything.
Yes, because they didn't agree with it, and this was a citizen of the UK, not a citizen of New Zealand. Right. I get it. Yeah,
I do too. Yeah. He was actually formally identified on December 22nd, 2020, after the Supreme Court of New Zealand rejected his appeal for continued name suppression. It was also disclosed that Kempson had been convicted of 9 total charges of rape, sexual violation, threatening to kill, and assault in 2 sexual violence trials before a judge in October and November 2020 that were independent of the Grace case. So on the 21st of February 2020, Kempson was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole of 17 years. He appealed his conviction on March 18th, but the Court of Appeals dismissed his appeal. On June 29th, 2021, the Supreme Court dismissed Kempson's application for leave to appeal the verdict, thereby exhausting his legal avenues to overturn his conviction, so he will remain in prison. Grace's death generated unprecedented reaction from the New Zealand public. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern made a public apology to the family of Grace on December 10th, saying, "On behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologize. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that."
Wow. Yeah, I kind of like her. Everything I've ever seen her in, I was like, man, she's kind of an upstanding individual.
Yeah. Last, Grace's family set up a foundation called Love Grace, which is https://www.lovegrace.co.uk. They've set this foundation up in her memory that helps victims of domestic abuse by asking people to donate handbags filled with items for women in need. And that's my story of Grace Milane.
Well, thank you for the story of Grace Milane. That's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, I don't know about cool, but
Well, you know what? I will say there are aspects of that story that are cool. Not that she got hurt or anything, but that she was able, or they were able to apprehend this dude rather quickly.
Yeah. I mean, days. Within days, they had him and on trial fairly quickly too.
Well, it took a couple of days for anybody to realize she was missing. And shortly after that, the police are like, "Oh, hey, look, she met with this guy. Oh, hey, look, he's not where he said he said he's not where he said he was."
Right. Oh, look, here on camera, he's buying a shovel. Oh, look, he's buying a rug doctor and cleaning out a car. And yeah. I mean, this guy didn't seem overly smart to me. I could tell you that.
Yeah.
I do have some fun facts about New Zealand to end our week, if you'd like.
Yes, I always want fun facts about New Zealand. The North Island is where they filmed a lot of the Lord of the Rings, I know.
Yes. There's also over 50 dormant volcanoes in the city of Auckland itself.
In the city?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. Auckland sounds pretty cool.
From 2006 to 2008, Auckland was ranked as the world's 5th best city to live in for quality of life.
Okay.
One in 3 Aucklanders have a boat, which earned the city the nickname the City of Sails. The Sky Tower that we mentioned in the story is a telecommunications and observation tower in Auckland. It's 328 meters, which is 1,076 feet tall, making it the tallest freestanding structure in the Southern Hemisphere and the 25th tallest tower in the world.
Oh, that's cool.
New Zealand is second only to the U.S. for number of McDonald's restaurants per head of population.
Gross.
The Pizza Hut, their mozzarella cheese does not come from Italy. It comes from Taranaki, New Zealand.
Okay.
There is a town in Hawke's Bay, New Zealand that holds the Guinness World Record for the longest place name in the world at 85 letters.
Oh my God.
So
that must be like a Maori name.
It is a Maori name. You're right.
Okay.
I'm going to attempt to pronounce it.
Okay.
I'll post it on the website later. So here we go. Taumata whaka tangi hanga kau au au autahama te ipokai whenu akati nahatahu.
I'm really impressed that you made it all the way through that. Thank you, sir.
The New Zealand badminton team was once called the Blackhawks as a gimmicky publicity stunt to attract sponsors and interest, but after about a year, they had to scrap the name. There is an official wizard of New Zealand. In 1990, the Prime Minister of New Zealand appointed Ian Brackenbury Chanel as the official wizard of New Zealand. The pointy-hatted, robe-wearing, bearded wizard has a history of politics and entertainment in Christchurch, but can often be seen with a young apprentice at major Canterbury events throughout the year.
Yeah, I've heard recently they're about to change out the wizard.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Well, and finally, in April of 2014, the New Zealand Jedi Society was established to help aid the advancement of the Jedi, promote understanding and knowledge of the Force, and to enable eternal vigilance under the Sith. It is now a choice under religion for the New Zealand census.
Yes, it is.
They have an actual website, jedichurch.org, where you can learn about the group, join membership, or even use their Jedi wedding vows. As of the 2001 census, over 53,000 people listed themselves as Jedi. In the 2006 census, the numbers dropped to just over 20,000 people claiming to be Jedi. And in the 2018, the figure was more or less in line with the 26 number, with some 20,409 people claiming to be a Jedi.
Wow.
And that's my fun facts about New Zealand as given to me by one of our listeners, Deb.
Thank you, Deb.
She wanted to go by, so I gave her a clue of what we were doing for the episode and got these fun facts about New Zealand, since I need fun facts.
We need fun facts.
So that takes us to the end of a fun recording week. As always, you can find our website, www.nerderyandmurdery.com, where you can find the link to all of our podcast platforms, as well as the link to our social media and our email addresses. So
plus pictures and other stuff for the episodes.
Absolutely. Pictures and links. So you can find out where we get our source material from, see pictures of some of the stuff we're talking about. I will put the name of that New Zealand town on our website and let people go at it themselves. You can find a link to our merchandise, where if you would like to get your Nerdery and Murdery logo merchandise to show off your fandom, you can. I do have a story with that. So one of our patrons was in a Walmart with one of our cups that had our logo on it, and there was a person in there that was standing at a table, like where they're selling subscriptions to DirecTV or the newspaper or anything like that. Anyway, the person looked at the cup that our fan had and said, "Hey, I love those guys. I listen to them every week."
Hey.
So definitely get your Nerdery and Murdery logo merchandise. It does help us, and you can show off that you're a fan as well and possibly connect with other fans out there. If you would like to donate to help keep our show going, you can find the link to our Patreon on our website. And we do appreciate every single one of our patrons.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And with that, that's the end of our recording week.
I have been Zig with your Nerdery.
And I've been Geoffrey with your Murdery.
Cue the music.